The San Andreas Fault is a great sleeping giant lying beneath the state of California, a vast boundary between two enormous pieces of the Earth's crust that grind slowly past one another, storing up energy year after year until, one day, it is released in a great earthquake. When the fault ruptures in a major event, the shaking will radiate outward across the land, and the cities that lie in its path will face a serious test. Some of those cities, by their location, their ground, and their nature, are in more trouble than others, standing closer to the fault or built on ground that would magnify the shaking, so that when the San Andreas finally ruptures, they would bear the greatest danger. This is a tour of those cities, the places that are in trouble if the Great Fault lets go, and of what makes each of them so exposed and so vulnerable. Before we go further, one honest and important word, because this subject deserves care. This video is not meant to frighten anyone, and it is not a prediction that a great earthquake is about to strike. Scientists cannot predict earthquakes, cannot say whether the next great rupture will come tomorrow or many decades from now, and the notion that the fault is somehow overdue is a misunderstanding of how the science really works. What can be said is that the San Andreas will one day rupture in a major earthquake, as it has many times before, and that understanding which cities are most exposed and why is not a reason for panic, but a foundation for the preparation that protects lives. Knowledge is what allows people to build wisely and to be ready, and it is that calm, clear understanding that this video is here to provide. So let us begin the tour with a clear head and a steady eye. Real quick, before we go further, a lot of people watch these all the way to the end, genuinely enjoy them, and forget the one small thing that keeps a small channel like ours alive: hitting subscribe. It is honestly important right now. Our sub rate is low, and every single tap makes a real difference. So if you are finding this valuable, please subscribe right now. It takes 1 second and costs you nothing. And drop the name of your city in the comments so we can see who is watching. Alright, let's begin. Why some cities are in more trouble than others. Before we visit the cities, it helps to understand why some are in far more trouble than others when the San Andreas ruptures, for the danger is not the same everywhere. The single most important factor is distance from the fault, for the shaking is most violent near the rupture and grows weaker as the energy spreads outward and dissipates. A city that sits directly upon or very close to the section of the fault that breaks would feel the most intense shaking, while a city farther away would feel it more gently. This is why the cities nearest the San Andreas are, all else being equal, in the most trouble. But distance is only part of the story. The ground beneath a city matters enormously, for the shaking is greatly amplified in places built on soft soil, loose sediment, or filled land, where the loose material shakes far more violently and for much longer than solid rock. Some cities sit atop deep basins of soft sediment that trap the seismic waves and amplify them, so that a city built on such ground could be shaken hard even at a considerable distance from the fault. The way a city is built matters as well, for older buildings constructed before modern earthquake standards and certain especially vulnerable types of construction are far more likely to be damaged than newer buildings designed to withstand the shaking. And the density of a city matters, for where more people and more buildings are concentrated near a great fault, the potential for harm is far greater. With these factors in mind, the nearness to the fault, the softness of the ground, the age of the buildings, and the density of the population, we can see why certain cities are in far more trouble than others. And we can begin our tour of the places most exposed when the San Andreas ruptures. The desert cities along the southern fault. We begin in the desert of Southern California, where the San Andreas runs through the region near the resort cities and the communities of the desert valleys, some of which sit remarkably close to the fault. These desert cities, known for their sunshine, their resorts, and their golf courses, lie in the path of the fault as it passes through the region. And a great rupture of the southern San Andreas would bring violent shaking to them, for they are among the cities that sit nearest to this section of the Great Fault. Their closeness to the fault places them squarely among the cities in trouble if it ruptures. These desert communities face the shaking that would come from a nearby rupture, and though many of their buildings are relatively modern, the sheer proximity to the fault means the ground motion could be severe. The region has grown considerably, with more people making their homes and their retreats in the desert, so that a great earthquake here would affect a growing population. There is an additional concern for the desert cities, and it is that a rupture of the southern San Andreas could affect the lifelines that cross the region, including the aqueducts that carry water across the fault to the great cities of the coast, and the highways and rail lines that pass through the desert. A great earthquake could damage these crossings, disrupting the water and the transportation on which a much wider area depends, so that the trouble the desert cities face is not theirs alone, but is bound up with the systems that serve the whole region. The desert cities along the southern fault are a reminder that being in trouble when the San Andreas ruptures is, above all, a matter of location. For these communities sit so close to the fault that they cannot escape the strong shaking a nearby rupture would bring, and they must rely on good construction and careful preparation to see them through. The inland cities in the path moving from the desert toward the coast, we come to the inland cities of Southern California. The growing communities of the inland region that lie between the great coastal metropolis and the desert, closer to the line of the fault than the coast itself. These inland cities have grown rapidly in recent decades as people moved inland in search of more affordable homes and more space, and their expanding populations now sit in a region that would feel powerful, shaking from a rupture of the southern San Andreas. The inland cities are in trouble not only because of their nearness to the fault, but because their rapid growth means that much of their development is recent, though this can be a mixed picture, for newer construction is generally safer, while the pace of growth can leave some areas less prepared than the long-established cities of the coast. A great earthquake on the southern fault would shake these inland communities strongly, testing their buildings and their infrastructure, and disrupting the lives of their many residents. There is a further consideration for the inland region, and it is that these communities lie along the routes by which help would travel between the coast and the interior, and along which water, power, and goods move through the region. Damage to the roads and lifelines in the inland area could hamper the response to a great earthquake and disrupt the flow of essential supplies, so that the trouble the inland cities face has consequences for the wider region as well. The inland cities in the path of the fault, home to a large and growing population, stand among those in trouble if the San Andreas ruptures, their location between the coast and the desert placing them within reach of the strong shaking. Quick question I would genuinely love your take on, and it takes 10 seconds. Do you live somewhere near a fault, or somewhere the ground has always felt perfectly solid and still? Drop a 1 if you are in earthquake country, or a 2 if not, because your answers help me understand who is watching, and I read every single reply. Okay, back to the cities. The great metropolis of the South. Now we come to the greatest city of the South, the vast coastal metropolis that is home to millions of people and to a substantial share of the nation's economy, a sprawling urban region that would feel a great southern rupture powerfully, even though the fault itself passes some distance to the east. This great metropolis is in trouble for reasons that go beyond simple distance, for it carries several features that would magnify the danger of a great earthquake. The most important is the nature of the ground beneath much of the region, for the great metropolis sits, in significant part, on deep basins of soft sediment that would trap the seismic waves and amplify them, prolonging and intensifying the shaking far beyond what the distance to the fault would suggest. A great rupture of the southern San Andreas could send waves into these basins that would shake the metropolis violently for a long and punishing time, for the soft sediment not only amplifies the shaking, but can cause it to continue for far longer than the rupture itself, as the waves reverberate within the basin like water sloshing in a bowl. The region also contains many older buildings constructed before the strongest modern standards, though great efforts have been made to strengthen the most vulnerable of them, and the sheer concentration of people, buildings, and vital infrastructure means that a great earthquake here would affect an enormous number of lives. The great metropolis of the South, with its amplifying basins, its dense population, and its older buildings, is very much among the cities in trouble if the San Andreas ruptures, for even at a distance from the fault, the combination of soft ground and dense development would place it in serious danger. Quick pause, because this part matters and it deserves to be seen by more people. If you are getting real value from this, tap the like button. It genuinely helps the video reach others who care about staying safe and informed. And if you have family or friends in California, share this with them, because it honestly matters that the people who live near the fault understand the risk and how to prepare. One like, one share to someone in your family, and let's keep going. The great city on the northern coast, now let us travel north, for the San Andreas also runs through northern California, passing near the coast and close to one of the great cities of the country, the famous city on the peninsula near the Great Bay. This city lies close to the fault, and a great rupture of the northern San Andreas would bring violent shaking to it and to the surrounding communities. This is a city that has known great earthquakes before, for the northern San Andreas has produced some of the most powerful and destructive earthquakes in the state's history. And the memory of those past disasters is woven into the city's history and its building codes. The great northern city faces a particular danger from the nature of its ground, for parts of it, especially near the shoreline, are built on soft sediment and on filled land reclaimed from the water, which would shake far more violently and for much longer than solid rock. These areas of soft and filled ground amplify the danger, so that even a city with strong building codes contains neighborhoods that would be shaken especially hard. As a dense city with a substantial population and a great concentration of economic activity, the famous city on the northern coast is squarely among those in trouble if the San Andreas ruptures. Its nearness to the fault and its areas of soft ground placing it in serious danger, even as its long experience with earthquakes has driven it to prepare more than most. The cities around the bay. Beyond the famous city on the peninsula, the great metropolitan region around the bay contains many other large cities, and these too are in trouble if the San Andreas ruptures, for they share the same nearness to the great faults of the region and the same challenges of soft and filled ground. The large city to the south of the bay, home to a substantial population and to a great share of the nation's technology, lies within reach of a great northern earthquake, as do the many communities that ring the bay, and much of the developed land in this region sits on soft sediment or on ground reclaimed from the water, ground that would shake far harder and far longer than the solid rock of the surrounding hills, magnifying the danger to the neighborhoods built upon it. The cities around the bay face the danger not only from the San Andreas itself, but from the network of related faults that thread through the region, some of which run directly beneath the densely populated areas. A great earthquake on any of these faults would shake the surrounding cities strongly, and the soft and filled ground on which much of the region is built would amplify the danger. Because this region is home to so much of the nation's technology and innovation, a great earthquake here would send effects rippling far beyond the region itself, disrupting industries and services relied upon across the country and the world. The cities around the bay, near the great faults, and built in significant part on soft and filled ground, are among those in the most trouble if the San Andreas ruptures, and their exposure is a reminder that the danger extends across the whole of the great northern metropolitan region. All right, I know, this is the second time I am bringing this up. You can roll your eyes at me. But honestly, if you have made it this deep into a video about the San Andreas, you clearly care about this stuff, and a lot of you watching still have not subscribed. I am not going to make you feel bad about it, but that one tap genuinely tips the scales for a small channel fighting a low sub rate. It really does matter to us. That is the last time I will ask, promise. Let's finish. What trouble really means, and how to meet it, having toured the cities in trouble if the San Andreas ruptures. From the desert communities and inland cities of the south to the great coastal metropolis, and from the famous city on the northern coast to the many cities around the bay, we must now consider what being in trouble really means, and how that trouble can be met. For this is the most important part of the story. To be in trouble does not mean to be doomed, for a great earthquake, terrible as it is a challenge that can be prepared for and survived, and the difference between a city that is devastated and one that recovers is, in large part, the difference between preparation and the lack of it. California has understood this for a long time, and it has become one of the best prepared places on Earth for earthquakes. The foundation of that preparation is the way buildings are constructed, for modern codes require new structures to be designed to withstand strong shaking, and older, more vulnerable buildings have been identified and strengthened, or retrofitted. so that they too can survive. A building built to modern standards is designed above all to protect the people inside, and the steady improvement of the building stock is one of the most powerful ways the trouble is being reduced. Alongside the buildings, the systems that carry water, power, and communication are being made more resilient. And the region has invested in early warning systems that can detect the first waves of an earthquake and send an alert in the seconds before the strong shaking arrives. Precious moments that can allow people to take cover and automatic systems to shut down. Beyond the great systems, the preparation of individuals and families is what would carry them through. Those who live in the cities in trouble can prepare by securing heavy furniture and objects that could fall, by keeping supplies of water, food, and other essentials to last through the disruption of services, by learning what to do the moment the shaking begins, and by making plans with their families for how to reunite and communicate afterward. These simple steps are within the reach of everyone, and they can make the difference between safety and harm, especially in the first hours and days after a great earthquake, when the public systems may be overwhelmed and outside help may be slow to reach every neighborhood. The trouble that these cities face is real, but it is not a hopeless kind of trouble, for it is precisely the kind that preparation can meet, and a prepared community can come through even a great earthquake far better than an unprepared one. What the San Andreas is telling us, having toured the cities in trouble and considered how that trouble can be met, we can step back and consider what the San Andreas is really telling us. The first lesson is that the cities in trouble are in trouble mainly because of where they sit and what they are built on, factors of location and ground that they cannot change, so that their exposure is a fact to be understood and prepared for rather than escaped. The desert and inland cities near the fault, the great coastal metropolis on its amplifying basins, and the cities of the north near the fault and on the soft and filled ground are all in trouble because of the accidents of geography, and understanding those accidents is the first step toward meeting the danger. The second lesson is that being in trouble is not the same as being doomed, and that the trouble these cities face can be greatly reduced by preparation. California has shown that a society can live with the certainty of great earthquakes and dramatically reduce the harm they cause through wise building, resilient systems, early warning, and personal readiness, and the cities in trouble have every reason and every ability to prepare. The gap between a devastated city and a city that recovers is bridged by the choices made in the years before the earthquake comes, and the more thoroughly a city prepares, the less trouble it will truly be in when the San Andreas ruptures. The third and final lesson is that the right response to the fault is not fear, but respect and readiness. The San Andreas will one day rupture, and the cities in its path will be tested, but that test can be met with resilience if the preparation is done beforehand. There is no cause for panic, for the shaking is not imminent and cannot be predicted, but there is every reason for calm, steady preparation, for the rupture will come in its own time. And those who are ready will fare far better than those who are not. The San Andreas is telling us to respect the power of the earth, to understand the trouble our cities are in, and to prepare wisely for the day the fault lets go, so that when it ruptures, the cities in its path can withstand the shaking and recover, and the people who live in them can be safe. That is the true message of the Great Fault, not that these cities are doomed, but that their trouble can be met, and a call to knowledge, to preparation, and to resilience in the face of one of the most powerful forces on our planet. For although we cannot command the earth, we are far from powerless before it and the choices we make today. In how we build our cities and how we prepare our homes and families can carry these cities safely through the day the San Andreas ruptures, so that the trouble they face becomes not a catastrophe to be feared,